had conjectured meaning is guessed, as when the author took his wife to zoo for meeting Baba, then his friends guessed that the bear would not recognize her. Bear would not recognize meaning is identify her. I had thought so too, and author also thought the same thing. But while she was yet some yards from his cage, when she was at some distance from his cage, means when they reached the zoo, and when she was at some distance from the cage of Baba, then and Baba saw her and he recognized her. He identified author's wife. He hauled, and by recognizing Bruno hauled meaning is cried with happiness, and author's wife also ran up to him. She patted him. Patted meaning is moved her hand on Bruno's back through the bars, and he stood on his head in delight, and in happiness he stood on his head. For the next 3 hours she would not leave that cage. She was sitting near Baba in front of cage. She gave him tea, lemonade, cake, ice cream, and what not, means everything she gave him. Then closing time came, and then it was time to leave the zoo, and we had to leave, and then author and his wife has to leave. But author's wife cried bitterly. Baba also cried bitterly. Even the hardened meaning is strict curator and the keepers felt depressed. They were also tensed by seeing their condition, by seeing the author's wife and Bruno's condition. As for me, I had reconciled meaning is controlled himself. Author controlled himself because he became to know that what was going to happen. Oh please sir, she asked the curator, and she requested head of the zoo, may I have my Baba back, that whether she could take Bruno back. Hesitantly he answered. Then curator answered her hesitantly, madam, he belongs to the zoo, as now he is zoo's thing, or we can say that as he is a zoo's property and is a government property, means she had to take government's order that if she wanted to take Bruno back, I can't give away government property. But if the curator's head's boss, who was the superintendent at Bangalore, agrees, means if superintendent would be agreed, then certainly meaning is surely you may have him back, then you can take Bruno back. There followed the return journey, and then they came back to Bangalore and a visit to the superintendent's bungalow, and then they visited superintendent. They went to superintendent's bungalow. A tearful pleading meaning is request. Then she made request in a teary way to the superintendent. She requested, Baba and I are both fretting, means they both are unhappy for each other. Will you please give him back to me? Will author's wife take Bruno back? He was a kind-hearted man, and he was a very kind man, and consented, and immediately he agreed. Not only that, but he wrote to curator, a letter to head of the zoo, in which he wrote him to lend us a cage, in which he wrote the curator that he should send a cage for sending the bear to Bangalore back. Back we went to Mysore, and after taking the permission letter from superintendent, they went back to Mysore again, armed meaning is equipped with the superintendent's letter. Baba was driven into a small cage. They shifted Baba into a small cage, and that cage was hoisted on the top of the car. Hoisted meaning is tied at the top of the car. The cage was tied securely, and a slow and careful return journey to Bangalore was accomplished. Accomplished meaning is completed, and the Baba was taken back to Bangalore. Once home, and once they reached home, a squad meaning is group of coolies were engaged meaning is involved for special work, means the coolies were arranged for some kind of work in our compound meaning is in the open area of author's house. And what kind of work was that? An island was made. Island meaning is raised platform which was surrounded by the water. An island was made for Baba. It was 20 feet long and 15 feet wide. whose length and breadth was 20 feet and 15 feet, and it was surrounded by, and that island was surrounded by a dry pit. Dry pit meaning is one kind of a hole or a moat, and in that hole there it was filled with water 6 feet, and that hole was 6 feet wide, 7 feet deep. A wooden box that once housed fowls meaning is for keeping the birds was brought. One kind of a box was there in Othor's house which he had used for keeping the birds. That box was put on the island so that the Baba could sleep in the box in the night, and in that box straw was placed inside to keep him warm and his baby, and even in the same box they had kept his baby. Baby was, that is his stick, the gnarled stump meaning is wooden stick, gnarled meaning is twisted stick, to which he was considering as a baby, along with his gun. And with this baby stick, his gun stick, which was a piece of bamboo stick, both of which had been sentimentally preserved, because these both things were saved by Othor's wife in the remembrance of Bruno, since he had been sent away to the zoo. From the time he had been sent away to the zoo, Othor's wife kept these both sticks in a loving manner in the remembrance of Bruno, and these both sticks were kept in the wooden box which was kept for Bruno to sleep, were put back for him to play with. In a few days the coolies hoisted the cage onto the island, and after some days when the island was properly ready, then they kept the cage on the island, and Baba was released, and Baba was taken out, or Baba was set free from the cage, and he was very delighted meaning is happy, standing on his hind legs meaning is back legs. He stood on his back legs, pointed his gun and cradled his baby, and he held the baby stick in his arm. My wife spent hours sitting on the chair, and even Othor's wife spent many hours by sitting on chair in the island, while he sat on her lap and while Bruno sat in Othor's wife's lap. He was 15 months old and pretty heavy too, and his weight was increased. The way my wife reaches the island and leaves means how the Othor's wife went to island and how she came back to the house. It was an interesting way. As the island was surrounded by the water, so it was difficult to reach in the island. I have tied, and the Othor have tied a rope to the overhanging branch of the mango tree. So the Othor tied a rope to the branch of mango tree by making a loop at its end by in a ring shape, means he gave the shape of a ring at the one end, and in that loop or in that ring one could keep the foot, and after keeping the foot she kicks off with the other. She jumped with the other foot to bridge the 6-foot gap and to cover the 6-foot gap that constitutes the width of the surrounding pit, which consists of the width of the surrounding pit. Means by keeping the foot in the loop of the rope, she kicks with the second foot, and she reached at the island. The return journey is made the same way, and when she had to come back to the house, she was doing the same thing. But who can say now that a sloth meaning is which could move slowly, which is moving slowly, has no sense of affection. And now we can't say that the sloth bear has no sense of affection, no memory, no brain, and no individual characteristics. Individual meaning is human characteristics. Means by reading this story we can't say that the animals don't have the sense of love or memory or human characteristics.